Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Today I'm going to be talking about floor standing speakers. As the name suggests, floor standing speakers are mounted on the floor, typically on a plinth or on spikes. They are obviously larger than bookshelf speakers, and as a result, typically require a larger room. And so, for people who don't necessarily have any space limitations, I generally advise that you start off with floor standing speakers. Floor standing speakers, because of their size, obviously can move more air, and because of that, you'll generally find that floor standing speakers provide more bass and an overall greater presence than a bookshelf speaker. I heavily advise, however, that you don't invest in very cheap tower speakers. I know there's a tendency for people to favor tower speakers at the lower price point, and by that I mean sub 30k. Generally speaking, you're not going to find a quality floor stander under that sort of threshold of about 30,000 rupees. So my general recommendation is that if you don't have the budget, stick to bookshelves to start off with. Maybe consider pairing up a sub. And if you do have the money, then I think generally speaking, floor standers are always the superior bet. At number one is arguably my favorite budget speaker, the Fyne 302i, which is the new iteration of the 302. It is 8 ohms, 120 watts, and close to 90 dB. So extremely high efficiency, can be driven by practically any amp out there. It pairs really well with the Marantz 6007. I've sold innumerable combinations of this particular system. What makes the Fyne special, I think, is the price point. It's got an MRP of about 69, but I think you should get it anywhere between 50 and 55, depending on the deals going on at that particular time. I think it's a very musical speaker, and while it's not super excessive on the bass, it provides enough bass for most music to be very enjoyable. Definitely my favorite and most recommended floor standing speaker to start off with. Next, we have the Elac F5.2 version 2. These guys are the bigger brothers of the B5.2 that I spoke about in the bookshelf video that you can also find on our channel. The 5.2s address the major drawbacks that you found on the bookshelf equivalent, which is that I felt the bookshelf equivalent sort of lacked in bass. I think the floor standing version of this particular speaker definitely makes up for the lack of bass. Overall, it's a great design. It's front ported. So for those with sort of space limitations in terms of how far the speaker can be from the wall, the Elac allows you to be as close to the wall as possible. And so I think that's something for a lot of people to consider. Overall, I think that it is a more sort of audiophile speaker than, say, the Fyne. A lot more accurate, a lot more detailed, but can be boring at times and can make bad recordings sound really, really bad. Another thing to remember specifically with these Elacs is that they're generally low efficiency. So I think again about 85, maybe 86 dB. So as a result, they require a really powerful amp to truly bring out what the speakers are capable of. Next, you've got the Dali Oberon 5s. They're rated at about Elac 5,000 in terms of MRP, but you'll likely get them for at least 10% less. So I've included them as part of this list. They operate at about 88 dB, 6 ohms, 150 watts, give or take. Do well with a nicely powered amplifier. I think they have a similar sound signature to the Fynes. However, the bass is slightly tighter, slightly more refined, slightly more present than the Fynes. So if you want a musical speaker, but need a little extra bass, but don't necessarily want overwhelming bass like you'll find maybe on the Elacs to some extent and some of the other models that I'm going to mention on this list, I think the Dalis are a perfect slot. I think they look slightly better maybe than the Fynes. So I think if aesthetics is your thing, the Dalis really make sense. Next up, we have the JBL A180. Great presence in terms of overall sort of sound and dynamics. Good lower end. So if you're the sort of person who likes, their bass, this is the speaker to go for. It provides a stunning amount of bass despite being a fairly smaller floor standing speaker, relatively speaking. The only potential issue that I found with the speaker was the fact that it had a slight hint of sort of brightness at the higher frequencies. So if that's something you don't like, I'd avoid the speaker. Another reason I think a lot of people love the speaker is because there's a great affinity in India to the JBL brand. So if you're a big JBL fan, I think this is the speaker setup I would pick up. It's also got a full-fledged home theater pack that you can get if you want to integrate this into a home theater system. Next up, we have the Q-Acoustics 3050i, which is the big brother of the 3030i, the bookshelf equivalent that I spoke about in our bookshelf video. The 3050i is a big speaker. As a result, provides tremendous amount of bass and general presence, can power up a room fairly easily. Comes as a pack for integration into a stereo system as well as a cinema pack. So if you have plans on gradually upgrading into a full-fledged home theater, again, a good choice to look at. The only potential issue that I feel with the Q-Acoustics is that they're fairly large and clumsy looking. So if aesthetics is a big deal, I'd potentially give the speaker a pass. As a bonus edition, I've included the Polk Audio S60, a large speaker, 8 ohms, 90 dB, 300 watts of power handling ability. So it can definitely do with a lot of extra power to truly see what these speakers are capable of. It is a down-firing speaker, and they've used a certain sort of bass port technology that they're referring to, which allows sort of more equal distribution of the bass frequencies. So generally speaking, if the speaker is set up properly, you'll find that the bass never gets, too muddy and too sort of wobbly. It's relatively tight and controlled, which is hard to find on speakers of this size. If you're the sort of person who listens to a lot of heavy metal, hard rock, plans on integrating this into a 5.1 down the line, this is the speaker system that I would go for. So that's my list of my top 5 plus 1 bonus floor standing speaker. My value for money recommendation and the best sort of bang for buck as part of this list, I feel, is the 302i from Fyne. You could also find the 302 in the market as they sort of move and liquidate stock. I don't think there's much of a difference between the 302 and the 302i. So if you find the 302 at a good deal, I'd go in for it. A thing to remember about investing in floor standing speakers is to remember that you need a certain amount of space in the room. So again, if you've got space issues, then I would give floor standers a pass. Figure out if the speaker is rear ported, front ported, or down firing. Specifically, if they're rear ported, you're going to need at least a foot and a half from the wall. So that's something to keep note of. Generally speaking, like I mentioned at the start of the video, avoid floor standing speakers under 30K. No matter what the reviews they have, it's very, very hard to find value for money floor standing speakers at that price point. Everything that I've spoken about today, all these products are available for purchase in links below. I've also got a basic primer about bookshelf speakers and floor standing speakers that, again, you can find on the website. If there's any suggestions or comments that you have, leave them in the comments below and I'll definitely get back to you. And I hope to see you on the next video.